So here we are in Chateau Poquet, the home of Abi Duhr, who is one of the 9 groundbreaking winemakers we have chosen for this edition of Wine Behind the Label. Abi is now going to explain to us his philosophy of how he makes wine, why he makes wine, and why he really is, in my opinion, a groundbreaking winemaker, because he does something different to the norm. Abi, tell us about your philosophy. What are your thoughts on making wine, and why do you make it in some ways different to other people?
Well, it's easy. I make wine I think I like, and I never made wine in the meaning that it has to be done like that so that people should like it. I always like making wines I like, and I have a certain idea about wine because I'm tasting quite a lot of different wines, and as long as when you're going in different regions you see things you like more than others, and sometimes you're getting a brainstorm saying, wow, that is interesting, that you should try too at home. But sometimes these things are mainly for red wine, and so I always had the idea, why not doing it also for white wine? Because also in red wine you can get some interesting ideas about winemaking. So I'm making, for example, skin contact, which is probably not done so much, especially in grape varieties like Riesling. And when you're doing these things, you realize that if you're working in the right way, you are getting amazing results. You have wines with more flavor, you have wines which are getting rounder due to the long fermentation process I'm normally doing, the wines losing some acidity. And all these things together give at the end a product which is quite different from what you normally find on the market.
Yeah, how many different varietals do you make?
I'm making 7 different grape varieties, which is, in my eyes, far too much. But the problem is that every time you are buying a vineyard, and this vineyard is normally not planted in the grape variety you want to have. That is, by the way, that's the reason why I have mainly one grape variety, which is Riesling. I never wanted to do it, because my aim was always to make a one of Auxerrois-based grape wine, and when you're buying a good vineyard in Luxembourg, it's normally planted in Riesling. So now I have over 60% Riesling, and I never wanted to do that. But nevertheless, I have to find a decision, and I have to find out what can I do with it, and I must agree that I like the grape variety that's quite a lot.
So what you're doing, in fact, is you buy a vineyard, you look at the terroir, and you say, well, I think this particular grape varietal is going to do best in this particular location.
You know, when I'm buying a vineyard, sometimes there's a feeling there, and I think, wow, that is interesting. And some time ago, I take care of where are my vineyards planted. And I found out that most of my vineyards are on expositions which are quite windy. I did not buy them on purpose, but those I bought were always on spots which were very windy, which helps me quite a lot, because a windy area is drying out quite quicker, less problems with diseases, and so on. So this is a positive effect. But I didn't buy them on purpose because of that. I just realized it later.
And how many vineyards have you bought recently, and what are the size of these vineyards? How many bottles do you produce altogether?
Well, the size of the vineyards are never so big, so sometimes you have half an hectare, sometimes you have 25 acres, or maybe they are even split it in 3 different vineyards. So these are things you are buying because they are close to what you have, because you think it is an interesting exposition you might get, and all these things are are giving the decision to buy them. I have not so much wines to sell because some of the vineyards have been replanted. So I have on production maybe 5 hectares of vineyards, another 3 hectares are young wines which will come to production these next years. So actually with these last years where the yields were fairly low, we made around 30,000 bottles a year.
Okay, that's really not a lot.
No.
And that's over how many different varietals?
7 different grape varieties.
7 different varietals, 30,000 bottles. And what is your aim as far as these wines are concerned? What do you want to achieve?
Trying to make the best wine which is possible on the spot I have and with the grape variety I have. So it can be a local grape variety like Elbling, which is a sort of, well, you can consider it being a little bit like an Alicoté style, or a Uni Blanc if you want. It's more this style of wine, high acidity, low flavor, and can nevertheless give amazing results if you are working the right way, you are harvesting late enough, having ripe grapes. All these things are very important.
Mm. I understand also you're working with Müller-Thurgau, which again is not considered to be a wine of wonderful flavour, but I think you have a different idea about this.
Well, the Müller-Thurgau vineyard I bought last year, and I definitely never wanted to start with a grape variety like that. But then I realized that the vineyard, after having bought it, had been planted in 1943, and so more than 70-year-old vineyards make sense to try to find out what you can do with it. And so I made different style of vinification. I put it in oak, not new oak, but oak of 3-4 wines. And so suddenly I realized that you are getting a wine out of that which is more a Viognier style. So again, quite interesting. It's amazing to find out that with this grape variety nobody is interested in it. I can nevertheless give some amazing wines.
Have you bottled any of it yet? Or is it
yes,
still?
yes. The 2013 is bottled.
2013. So maybe we could have a look at
we will have
some
a look at that.
and to see what we can do with this Müller-Thurgau. Okay. How do you see the future now of your operation, of your business? Are you expanding still? Or?
Well, of course I'm expanding because staying on one spot or just stopping, that doesn't make sense. I want to expand because I think it's important to make it when it's possible. And so actually it is possible, so I'm trying to expand.
So there'll be even more varietals in the future?
No, that is not the aim. The aim is more bigger quantities on certain wines. Okay.
Have you ever thought of making some reds?
Yes, but still now I didn't get the right vineyards for doing it.
Okay. All right, Abi, thank you very much. Okay, just as a postscript now, we talked about the Müller-Thurgau. This is the label called Hummelt, and lovely colour. I've just had a taste, and it has some characteristics of Viognier, perhaps maybe a little bit of grapefruit on the palate as well. But Abi will now say how he's worked this Müller-Thurgau.
Well, we harvested beginning October, so it's very late for harvesting grape variety like that. But I did not feel it harvesting earlier because I thought it was not ripe enough. So it has a natural alcohol degree maybe 11.3, so it's not so high. But I wanted to keep it on this traditional way because in the past this grape variety never had a higher alcohol degree. And I made with the mature grapes which were not rotten, I made skin contact of some time, and the botrytis grape I just made an entire grape crushing. And so I blended those 2 parts together. after having let them ferment in oak of 3 to 4 wines for around 8 months.
Okay, and the result is really, quite aromatic.
Yes, well, that is the fact that first, well, which I didn't know when I bought the vineyard, that this vineyard had been planted in 1943, so the vineyard is at least one part is more than 70 years old. So of course yield was not so high. I made on 25 hours 1,000 liters, which makes maybe 40 hectoliters per hectare, which is really not much for a grape variety like that.
Okay, well thanks Abi, very interesting, and we'll have another glass of. Right, so tell me about Brommelt and its minerality.
Well, Brommelt is definitely a wine making out of a grape variety which is probably not considered as being the noble grape variety of Luxembourg, but it's a grape variety which is really amazing because it has normally high acidity and low aromatic flavor. But when you have low yields, you have old wines, then you are getting a structure in the wine where you, even with low alcohol, you consider as having a wine which has 12.5 degrees, and by the fact it only has 11 degrees. And that comes from the fact that not only the alcohol is important, but also the structure which is inside the wine, which comes from the substance. The roots are taken out of the soil, and maybe also a hint of skin contact. All this helps giving the wine a huge complexity.
And the Brommelt, you were saying, you've compared it with Chablis, and
yes, it is a grape variety which has this austere finish like Chablis quite often have.
A lot of minerality.
The minerality is really dominant in the Chablis and in this grape variety too. And so sometimes I'm using myself with friends and then giving blind tasting with this wine, comparing with Chablis wines just for finding out it goes in that direction or not. And it definitely does, because people never complain that there is a non-Chablis in the Chablis flat.
That's amazing. You were saying you buy a lot of good bottles to compare.
Yes, because for me it's important knowing where I stand with what I'm doing. When you are just trying your own wines, you are getting cellar blind, like you say, and so it's very important to taste also wines of other companies, of other regions, which maybe go in the direction of the style of wine I'm doing. And so, of course, when I'm making a wine based on Chardonnay, I will compare them, of course, with the best producers in Burgundy, and this is for me very important for finding out where do I stand in comparison to these companies, for knowing what I'm doing wrong, and therefore I have to try them against these things. And normally I'm doing these tastings in blind tasting, where I don't know where the wines are, and normally I have friends around me which are coming out of the wine business, so we will discuss together around this thing. And so that's always important for me. And
they've generally shown well against these other more well-known.
Yes, normally people are shocked that the Luxembourgish wines are not so bad in comparison to these very well-known wines.
Great, thank you.
That was an interview with Abi Duhr, one of the 9 groundbreaking winemakers we have given an award to for this edition of Wine Behind the Label. And if you want to know who are the other 8, then please do go to the website www.winebehindthelabel.org, click on the appropriate page for the 9th edition, and you'll be able to find out once you've downloaded the guide.